Hey, it is JFoss. I am back with part 4 of 5 in the Overrated, Underrated series. As always, just because I say that they're underrated, or my opinion of them is that they're underrated, doesn't mean they're the best hero ever. And if I think that they're overrated, doesn't mean the hero is bad. I'll throw out some extra disclaimers here for the dark heroes, in that we're all affected by our bias and where we fight in the game and who we see and who we think is easy. And you'll see that reflected a little bit in this color. And I'll also add that Season 5 comes out in a couple days. So obviously there's some potential to shake some things up there. I thought about delaying the video, but let's face it, new heroes are always going to be coming out. So there's never really a perfect time to release it to where it couldn't be invalidated later on. So here we go with the dark heroes. First up for overrated, I have Bjorn. Bjorn's a solid hero for sure. That he's not. Some of the heroes I have on these lists are bad. I don't think he's bad at all. I think he's just a little bit overused. Actually, didn't even know I had emblems on him. I probably should strip him, but looking at the 3 stars, purple's not really a event color. You're not using purple for the most part to rank events. If you go through the tournaments, he is of average speed, which is not a death sentence in bloody battle. But purple has Ed, Balthazar, and Tyrum, who are fast. And one of the things here is that if you look at the 3 that are fast, like Tyrum has some utility and buff booster, and you can flip to his costume to cleanse, and his damage is considerably less than Bjorn. But you go into some of the other snipers with higher attack. You know, the versions of Balthazar and Ed are all in that situation where they're faster and do like 80% of the damage Bjorn does, 75 to 80%, so I'd just rather have the faster speed. If you're comparing him to multi-hitters, you know, it's tight in the range, except for Maeve. Like, the damage is similar between him and Chochin and Guardian Bat. But I feel now that I don't really have anywhere to use them, you know? In Rush, if I'm going to use purple, I'm going to bring Maeve, who's from Slayers, and I'm going to bring Trevel, right? Or Chochin for the mana effect if I don't have Trevel. If I'm in Bloody Battle, you know, I want those fast guys. If I'm in buff, well, I'm going to bring Tyrum as a Dispel, probably. I may even bring Maeve, even though she's slow. I think, unfortunately, you have a situation here where you actually have a decent hero, but because of what has been released, he's quickly become less useful than he was when he was released. So for those reasons, I have Bjorn in the overrated category. Next up for overrated, and surely the one that'll probably make the most people angry, I have Costume Rigard. Again, this is a good hero. He's provides plus attack, which is valuable in various areas, and does a heal overturn. I'm going to talk more about, in this one, the current meta and why I think people made mistakes with Rigard, and just in general what I see a ton of players make a mistake in terms of leveling their roster. I think there's a big misconception that you can just talent grid and limit break your 4-star and then say, oh, it's a 5-star now. And while I get that there's some sense that it's around, you know, depending on the hero, like a +7 or something. Well, let's see. 681 power, and I understand power is not always a reflection of the... Okay, I don't have an example. I just recently stripped somebody, so I didn't have the example I thought I could show. But when we're talking about roster development, I think a lot of times people get in this trap where they keep leveling up the new sexy thing that they get, the new fast attacking hero, the new hero that hits all. And I think way too often, even at the very highest tiers, we fall into this trap to say, well, I'll just use my 4-star healers, they're just as good. And I don't think people are realizing that tomorrow I'll be able to, if I want to, I can limit break my 5th blue 5-star. And I'm sure people who've bought more of the deals are at 6. This idea that people aren't going to break their 5 stars, or that a limit broken 5-star isn't going to be the norm even for offense relatively soon at the highest tiers, I think is just incorrect. Sure, you gain a lot by putting emblems and limit breaking them, but then what do I gain when I put emblems and limit break aerial? And I think we fall into this trap to where we just say, use the 4 stars, limit break them, save your mats for the new sexy toy that you pull in the portal. And I think disregarding the healers is a mistake. And I'm sort of picking on Rigard here because he's the one I see the most where people have 4 or 5. And I understand that for many, many players, probably the majority of players watching this, they don't have a choice. They don't have those fancy 5-star healers. But we've been in a purple tank meta for like 9 months, a year. We've been in purple tanks for a long, long time. And it's just sort of like, I don't feel the community adapted. I felt like the people that were using the Rigards, and again, I know a lot of people have to, but for the people that have choices, they either didn't level as many 5-star healers as they should, and instead of they leveled a bunch of more attacking heroes. The power creep is exceeding unless Season 1 gets another set of costumes that bumps these stats up more. You're going to see this become more and more and more of a gap that I don't think people realize. So definitely a good hero to have. I realize almost everyone's used him. 90 to 95% of the people that watch my videos probably have to use him. But if you're in that situation where you're sitting on a ton of 5-star healers that are average speed or faster and just not leveling them because they're not the sexy choice, I would encourage you to level the 5-star healers. Ending on this without beating them up too bad, the cleanse used to be extremely rare, which is why he was so popular. Now it's not. You have tons of heroes that can do these cleanses now at various star levels. And there's tons of healers now. It's not as scarce as it was. So if you're one of those people that is still forcing Rigard into your lineup against purple tanks and sitting on 5-star healers, I would, particularly if you have 5-star healers that are average speed or faster, I would seriously consider leveling some of them, because this gap is just going to get wider and wider and wider unless they release another set of costumes for Season 1. So, a long explanation because I understand it's a controversial pick, but for all those reasons, I have chosen Rigard as the sort of poster boy for that problem, and thus overrated. And continuing on into the overrated picks that are likely to get me in trouble. I mean, purple is just so deep, guys. You got to realize, too, that well, I'll explain here. Freya. So Freya is fast and produces minions. Now, I remember when Freya came out, people thought she was terrible, and then people kind of like, oh, she's not that bad, and then she got pretty popular as a tank. She's still probably pretty good in bloody battle, at least on offense. But I'm looking at that, from the perspective, again, of where I fight wars, and where I fight wars, almost every single person has a Scotty or a Grimble or both or multiple. And what you basically have here is, in my opinion, the weakest of the 4 minion summoners for the tank position in purple. So you have Bera, you have Holda, who sort of looks like a pig that came out recently in Season 4, and you have Dia-chan, who spawns minions that can steal buffs. That came out in the War of Three Kingdoms. So I talk a lot of times about a direct substitute or a similar hero I think is better, and I think on defense of those four, this is the least threatening of them. And obviously there's a lot of alliances where this hero can still work at tank. So again, keep in mind the perspective of fighting in, top 20 to 40 wars versus not. But this hero, when we fight against her, it's like a mad rush to get to the Freyas. There'll be a couple on the board, and basically everyone's looking to get their Grimble or their Scotty out onto the Freya team because it's early passive special. It's really the only hero I can think of that I've ever seen fire 3 times at the tank position before any of my heroes charged, and I still won. Now, there might be a Kunshin or something from back in the day, but yeah, at the higher levels, I don't see it on defense, and that's where she's used a lot. Obviously, she does have some utility in tournaments. This is not a bad hero. But with the minion counters coming, and her being the weakest, literally of 4 5-star purples that do minions, and I think she's the weakest overall. For all those reasons, I have her in the overrated category. Next up for overrated, I have Ursena. I'm not going to pick on her costume here. I'm just focusing on the regular version. Ursena is a Season 2 hero that came out at the very end of Season 2. And if you weren't playing around that time, a lot of the content, most of the people who were making content for the game and doing guides and tips for the game, it was all, at that time, it was mostly mono play, as opposed to now where if you watch a lot of the high-level play, it's very rarely mono. And obviously she punishes that well if she's in the tank position. But that sort of gets to my point now, is that you basically have a hero that can only play tank on defense. And you say, well, yeah, but you can't bring yellow. Okay, that's fine. In war, you're typically not running 6 teams of yellow anyway. Some people have the roster for it. 99.9% of the player base does not. And I'll throw in that a lot of times I throw out damage numbers or whatever in line groups, and people get really defensive about them. But I'm going to put out a number for Ursena a few numbers for Ursena that may illustrate part of the reason why I think that she's overrated. 130% damage to all. Okay, I think we all know that's low, right? Like, that's a little bit better than Mysterio, who's very fast. So you say, put her in the tank position, 260 to all. Okay, now you're dealing with a condition that literally is only going to ever happen when she's on tank. If you get her charged on offense, it's not going to happen to all 5 heroes. It's probably, if you're lucky, happen to 3 or 4. But let's just say, best case scenario, this hero is great, 260 to all, stick her in the tank. I'll just pull it up, might as well. Even if Ursena gets her condition, Mach R, it's like within 1% when you calculate it out in the damage equation. Mach R does better damage, which is fine. Not everything is damage, right? But just take a note of that, and you might say, well, he's no damage to purple. Well, Ursena has to have 5 things happen to get to that damage, where he just has to not hit purple. So let's go back to Ursena. So yeah, Mach R, better than Ursena, right? No, obviously not, but I think people just don't realize, like, all versions of Kill Hair hit harder, even if Ursena's conditions met. Karnov hits harder. Mach R hits harder. I mean, all versions... Well, Actually, one version of Quintus hits slightly lower, but most of the versions of Quintus hit harder. And I think you're looking at a hero where people think she's still premier tank and hits hard, but her damage without the condition is not very hard. Her damage with the condition's outclassed by virtually every other purple average speed hero that hits all. I don't think people realize that. So you put, okay, the reflect, you can't bring yellow against it. Okay, but Mitsoku was never considered a top tank. She was never even really considered a good tank at all. So I just don't get, if you have a hero that can only play tank, this condition on offense is not going to be met often, and it can mess up your firing order depending on what you're running. Like if you're wanting to do an elemental defense down or a defense down first. So in general, you used to have a hero that really doesn't get good damage overall at all, but the one place she can get it is in the tank position. If you look at tournaments, the extra damage to Holy, if you're going to tank her and say buff booster, there isn't going to be Holy for to get that extra damage against. Her damage is now outclassed by heroes that are somewhat readily available, like Killhair. So I've never gotten it. I've never found this hero difficult. When I used to play mono, I don't very often anymore. I just wouldn't bring yellow against her. At that time, I never had to fight any alliances that had 30 or whatever. So to me, you basically have a less versatile version of Mitsoku. And Mitsoku's not an A+ hero, I don't think most people would say. You're putting a lot of value on this reflect, because if you're running on offense, it's not going to be for the damage, because you're probably going to have better options for damage on offense. So factor in that we're in a purple tank meta with some Ferrets mixed in. And yeah, I've seen, and not just, I respect all the content creators, so I'm definitely not hating on Anchor. I like Anchor. I'm in a few rooms with Anchor, and we're both in the North Kingdom, so there's nothing there. This hero has been consistently overrated, I think, by everyone who does content, when now she's just outclassed. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox, but her damage is, to get good damage, she basically has to run tank. Any other position in defense, she isn't good. Her damage on offense, you're not going to get very high very often. So you're basically using for the reflect, which can be a valuable thing. I'm not knocking that. I use Mitsoku sometimes, but the idea that this is a top tier hero with as deep as purple is, I wouldn't even put her in the top 15 for purple 5 stars. And I'm not exaggerating. Like, she's still serviceable, but this idea that this is a top hero, I think has got to go. So I'll end my rant there, and Ursena. And last up for overrated, I have Agrafina. Now, Agrafina, again, like pretty much all the ones on this purple overrated list, I would not at all classify as bad or anything like that. Mana charge 1, I mean, it's weak, but you'd expect it to be weak for mana charge 1. Charge 2 is pretty strong, but my issue here is more, it's the structure with the magic heroes I haven't liked. And I still don't like, even after the buffs, and she has been buffed, by the way, at this point I'm doing this video. You have I believe it's like 12.3 or 12.5 or 12.6 tiles baseline to get mana charge 2. You can't use it. If you want to use it in Rush, it takes twice as long because of the charge mechanics in Rush. Charge 1 would be good and bloody, but then you basically can't use charge 2 at all if you combo. So it's just a hero that same with Nadezhda. I think she's harder to fit in. Like, I think there's a lot of lower level and mid level players that play with these heroes on the map, or you know, they're not playing at the highest levels, and yeah, use this hero there, and she's great. But like, people afraid to use tabards on her because they think she's gonna be nerfed, which is a downgrade. It's ridiculous. I mean, these. You think how long it takes to get charged 2? A good player with a developed roster is going to be able to get a dispel up for that, right? I mean, it's an awesome special if you can get there, but I'm pretty sure I can get one of my... and get a fast dispeller up before that. And if I can't, it's probably a match I would have lost anyway, where she actually gives me time to come from behind. Charge 1, like with many of the magic heroes, is just not impactful enough. Her realm bonus is damage, I believe. Someone put that in the comments if it's not the damage one. But, which doesn't really fit her special. So, yeah, she's fine. I will, like I mentioned, Ursena's still got a lot of, or has some value in the Reflect, and some things Freya's good at. I will say where I would use this hero, like personally, is I run a lot of 3-1-1 or 3-2, but I generally prefer 3-1-1 if I can do it. And the ones would be different color support heroes. So in a 3-1-1 specifically, where you have your 3, you know, blue or whatever, and let's say you have a, I don't know, red healer like Garnet or Grizzle as one of the ones and Agrafina as the other. That's why I actually like this hero, because you do get some, and I may do a thing later on why I like 3-1-1, but I definitely could, I may actually even use her there if I got her. Now I have Dark Lord that I haven't started yet, along with a couple other projects that I'd like to do in purple, but if you do like this hero is not bad. I don't think she really fits a mono team, because if you got your required tiles with a purple mono team, you would have won already anyway. But if you have this hero, and it's one of the few rare or special heroes you have, I would be very intrigued to run her in a 3-1-1. And I even run Mother North and Albric. And I've heard a lot of times you can't run slow heroes, so I'm not automatically turned off because they're slow. She's fine. Purple is incredibly deep. I don't like the mechanics. I don't like how it's limited to where you can use it. I don't like how few places you can use it, I should say. But I'd be lying if I said that this holding for charge 2 for the Titan for most players has some value. If you are struggling to beat hard map stages, like hard season 4 or whatever, charge 2 has a lot of value. And I would even consider using her in a 3-1-1. So not useless. I know I went through like 5 really popular heroes for Overrated. Keep in mind, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying I think they're overvalued. And I do think Agrafina is overvalued and overrated. But you should definitely be leveling her ahead of like all the Season 1 heroes. All the purple Season 1 heroes, for example, in my opinion. So, on the overrated list, not terrible. Don't get too mad at me for my overrated picks. Agrafina wrapping it up. Alright, getting into the underrated, I have Ed. Ed was buffed in the second cycle of villains buffs. I think this family bonus is cool. He does have a friend he can use it with at the 3-star level. But basically why I have him on here is after the buff, he is 4th for 3-star snipers for guaranteed upfront damage. That puts him ahead of all the purple ones. Guaranteed upfront damage for 3-star snipers. He's fast. Fast always has utility and bloody. That little second part is at least marginally useful in buff. And yeah, anytime you can look at a list and there's 10, you know, you got all the versions of Balthazar, Ed, and technically Morris, Prissa, Renfeld, Tyrum, and you have the guy that comes in the top of the pack for guaranteed damage, and I almost never see him. I see the other ones a lot, and Bjorn. But for those reasons, I have Ed in the underrated category. Moving on to the next one, I have excuse me, Costume Sabina. Now, she makes as many buffs for buff booster as Costume Rigard. She has the heal over time and the excuse me, she does not have as many as Costume Rigard, but she does dispel buffs from all enemies, and all enemies are immune to new buffs. I prefer this in buff booster, Costume Rigard, and I think I'm 49-1 in the last 2 4-star buff boosters, so I do pretty well offensively in the 4-star buff boosters. It's definitely hard to use purple if you're seeing purple tanks a lot, but I do like the special. I definitely would prefer regular Rigard over regular Sabina, but I like the Costume Sabina better than Costume Rigard, and I think she has probably more relevance right now. You know, taunt heroes are still popular. We're going to have a yellow taunt hero of the month coming up, and I actually just recently stripped my Rigard and took Sabina up because I found I was never using Rigard. So while they're highly comparable, and even if you said Costume Rigard's better than Sabina, I wouldn't disagree with you strongly. I mean, I think Costume Sabina's better, but you see the other one a lot more. You see Rigard Costume a lot more. So give Costume Sabina a try. It's almost a cheat code in 4-star buff booster tournaments. And if you were annoyed by taunt now, there's going to be more. So just keep that in mind. More in 10 or 12 days or something. So Costume Sabina, underrated. Next up for underrated, I have Gafar, not to be confused with Jabbar. And this is one of those basically a lack of competition type of scenarios. So 4 stars that hit for upfront damage that you can get charged at fast speed or faster. There are none that hit all. Cheshire Cat does a damage over time to all, but no upfront damage. For hero purple 4 stars that hit 2 or 3, none of them are fast. Ametrine charge 2 of 3 is the premier option in this category. Theoretically. But and then going into fast 4-star snipers, if you want to classify Ametrine charge 1 as a sniper. But my point here, and basically my whole point on this guy, at least as of now there's one coming eventually in Season 5, I believe. Maybe I'm thinking of a different event. Yeah, I may be thinking of a different event. But if you want to bring a fast hero on offense at the 4-star level, it does upfront damage. For purple, there just isn't really much. You can bring a bunch of Ametrines, you can bring Ametrine this guy, and there are some very good average heroes in that class, like Costume Tubertus and Proteus. But if you want that fast and bloody battle, or you want this decreased healing to deal with those annoying 4 healer teams in buff, then you basically have a situation where the hero is just the only option. Like, he's not particularly great, but if you want a fast 4-star purple, I mean, where else you gonna go? So for that main reason, I have Gafar as underrated. Next up, I have Obakan Costume. for the underrated category. Purple is incredibly deep for 5-star level. It's probably the deepest color, and I don't think a lot of people would argue that. And there are better heroes, for sure, but where I think this guy gets sort of left in the dust as a never-look-at type hero, but I don't think he's as bad as the perception. He has hit all damage. Now, it is... it's actually close to about average for hit all, and he's going to be faster than a lot of people in that category. Now, it's not massive damage by any means, but, you know, it's around someone like Viscaro, the hero of the month that does Fiends, and this guy's fast. What I will say about counterattack, when I first started playing, almost about 3 years and a week ago, counterattack was just sort of going through that first phase out, where at the beginning of the game, people would put Kashrek at tank, Boral and Cyprin or Cyprian at flanks, and then a healer like Boltusk on the left wing and Wukong on the right wing. And it was sort of moving away from that. And sort of the consensus was that why charge a hero who most of his damage is, or all their damage is dependent on the enemy firing specials. Now with heroes like Ferrant and Sif that do these other things, I think it's kind of moved back in the other direction where it's sort of becoming back in again. And, you know, you factor in 182% damage to all enemies, assuming you're not going against a null FOD tank, then, you know, you could use this guy to deal with all the Friggs and Odins and stuff like that on the flanks and wings, because at fast he's going to have a chance to get there. Counterattack for 4 turns to... I don't think people realize that's 4 turns at fast speed. Like, I understand Sif is really good and is in right now because of the color relationships, but what's literally an average, about average, maybe a little below average, for hit all damage, and he's fast, and he does counterattack, and a lot of the big teams are multi-hitters, hit 3 or hit 5, particularly a lot of popular hit 5s, like Frigg, Morel, Odin, Octros, you know, stuff like that. I'm surprised this guy doesn't get more play, and I think I know he doesn't because there's no FOD, but I don't think this is a bad hero to have. I was doing written reviews at the time when he came out, and I said, look, this guy is flying under the radar because purple's so good. And it is. But I think he deserves a little more. I think he's better than I think he's better than he gets credit for. And I think he's especially underutilized on offense given the current meta. I mean, I practice all these weird combinations. I do these raid challenges in other groups. And when you're going against a bunch of hit-all enemies, counterattack's just surprisingly effective. If you've never stuck Brynhild in between Cyprin and Boral or something like that, then I may try it. It may surprise you in the current landscape at the highest tiers how effective counterattack can be. So, for all those reasons, I have Obakan costume, specifically the costume, not the regular, the costume, in the underrated category. And last up for underrated, I have my buddy Grimble. I have had more arguments about Grimble online and a few on the forums, but mostly in private groups. I've had more arguments about Grimble than every other hero combined. And I've heard he doesn't fit my play style, which is just something I believe that people... Never mind, I won't get into that part of it, but... Minions are here. He is one of, if not the best at it. I realize that Scotty is extremely popular, but Scotty's not very good in Equalizer. And Grimble still is. I have the troops to get Grimble up to functionally fast, so level 23 mana troop, generally speaking, gets him charged in 9 tiles, use him against minion teams. He eats 3 or 4 minions, and he charges my Alfric. A lot of people do similar with no FOD, but you need way higher troops to do that with no FOD. He's just damn effective at minions, and he does have a little bit of damage if there are no minions there. The link is not bad, it's okay. The link is crit. But if you are not using this guy because most of the minion summoners are purple, I would get out of that mindset, because he can make all your slow and very slow heroes charge in 9 tiles against a minion team. So if Quintus or Lubu or Viscaro or Marie Therese or Karnov or whoever you want to use, that, or Alfric, you want to use that slow, he can basically make them not slow. This has always been one of my favorite heroes. Like I said, I've gotten so much pushback on him from players who don't feel they feel he's a niche hero, right? Well, that's another trap people fall into, is they don't level their Titan fighters, they don't level their minion counters, and then, you know, you're looking at a roster full of Sartanas and Lianas at some point, and then that's just not that. You just don't have anything for the gimmicks. You don't have any tricks up your sleeve. You basically have generic heroes that just damage. And I love this hero. I've gotten to #1 many times using this hero. In fact, I did it once using him on every team to prove a point. I set my trophy record using this hero a ton. And I have a pretty high count. I think it's 3365. I don't understand if you have this hero, why you wouldn't have leveled at least 1 copy. He's just so good at countering minions. And by the way, there's a whole war for minions. So minions are also popular in Bloody Battle. I use them all the time in Bloody Battle against the Beras, Freyas, Krampuses, whatever, because he's that good, and he allows my slow purple heroes to get there a little faster and just wreck everything. So perhaps even I think most people know now, because so much of it was negative at release. I think this guy got an unfair shake basically throughout. I may even limit break him. Like, I'm not joking, because I view his value as extremely long-term protected in terms of a minion counter. So after all the literal paragraphs of arguments I've had over the years on Grimble, he is my final choice for purple underrated. So I know there were some controversial picks. Again, everything's biased toward the level you play at, and underrated doesn't mean they're the best hero in the game, and overrated doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad. So thanks for watching if you made this far.